How much donation?
You can get whatever you want.
Okay.
This box and it's just the building is the first church that was built after the fire, and it was built for the Congregational Church on the other side of the river. The Catholics rebuilt on this property after the fire, and in 1927 that got hit by lightning and it burned to the ground. Yeah. And so the Congregational Church had consolidated with the Congregation Marinette, and so this building was not being used, so the Catholics purchased it, and they had to bring it across the river. And these are the pictures.
Wow.
They started out with a truck, but they weren't able, it blew the transmission or something, so they had to go to a horse and winch. And it took several days for it to get over here. And when it got over here, it was facing the wrong way, and then they had to turn it to the front. Yeah. Perhaps it was built by the same builder because it fit on the foundation that was here.
Wow.
And that was maybe part of the reason why they bought it that way.
Wow.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. The Catholics used it then up to the mid-1950s, and then they built a brick church and school. And then they donated it to the city, and the city asked the Historical Society to put it as a museum in 1963.
Well, that is awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you very much, Will. That is awesome. Taking it across the bridge.
Get out of your way.
Anyway.
Oh, wow.
That is amazing. This is like period closed from...
When we opened the museum, it was because everything burnt in Peshtigo that night. They asked for anything of that time period, and so that's how you see that all the people lived at that time. Other than these three first cases, and then there's another case up on the altar area that are actually artifacts that have gone through the fire.
Well, so the whole town burned?
The whole town burned.
The whole town burned. Wow.
I'm going to explain this to you through these pictures. This is an artist's drawing of the map of what we'd say the township of Peshtigo. And you can see it's quite forested, but it's laid out like a city.
Right.
And if you look on this side, there's a huge building there. That was the world's largest woodenware factory. And it was owned and operated by a man named William Ogden.
Wow.
And he happened to have been the first mayor of Chicago. And so that night, he took quite a hit because he had a lot of real estate in Chicago. And he had this big plant. He had several businesses here, and he had 2 big sawmills. He owned a company store and a boarding house.
Oh, wow.
He took a big hit.
Yeah, the newspaper down there, see there?
Oh, wow.
The Great Pesco Fire, 1871.
I'm just starting with the tell about the fire if they want to join.
Oh, sure. Yes, she's just telling the story of the fire. Did you want to listen in on that?
Yes.
Very good.
Okay. This is a map of Peshtigo that was drawn the year before the fire. And if you look at it, you can see how it's laid out as a township. And it's very wooded. It's a very typical lumber town. Now, we talk about, on this side of the river, there's a huge building. That was the world's largest woodenware factory. And it was owned and operated by a man named William Ogden. Now, he happened to have been the first mayor of Chicago. So that night, he took quite a hit. He not only owned this big plant here, he owned several companies, and he also owned sawmills here, and he owned a lot of property.
What kind of factory did you say?
Woodenware. You know, buckets and clothespins, you know, wooden household
Anything
things.
for wood, yeah.
Anyway, but the reason we tell you about him is, at the time of the fire, he was instrumental in getting the railroad here to Peshtigo. And that's what was happening. They were cutting these big trees. First of all, the railroad only came as far as Green Bay, or Fort Howard, as they called it at the time. And he wanted that railroad to go all the way up to Escanaba because it would get his materials to him more safely and expedite his products, finished products out. And when they would not do that, he got a group of men to invest, and they purchased the Chicago Northwestern Railroad, and now it was going up to Escanaba.
Great.
And it was just about to Marinette at the time of the fire. They're cutting these big trees and making paths for the railroad. They're burning the lashings. They're using the timbers for the railroad. And all around, there's fire and smoke, so it was very common to the people in Peshtigo. Just to the west of this area and a little north is the farming communities called the sugar bush areas. Their lumber barons previously have they buy tracts of land, and they cut out the hardwoods, the oaks and stuff for their products, and then they move on, and they leave the property for back taxes. Well, that could go on just so long. Then the government enacted the Homestead Act, where people could come and clear that land, make it tillable, they could get that farmland free. So we had a big influx of a lot of people from within the United States as well as from Europe. And they were coming into this area. And they're burning the stumps and the things they're not using. The Indians are in this area. They're using fires for their traditional doings, as well as even the people in Peshtigo use fire for burning garbage and whatever. And the hunters were very careless. They would hunt, and at night they would put fires to keep the animals from devouring them. And in the morning they got up and would leave, and so they didn't put those fires out like they should be doing, because it had been a very dry drought year. There hadn't been much snow, and then there was no measurable rain from July 3rd to October 8th. And October 8th it was extremely hot. There was strong winds coming in from the southwest, and then a cold front came in, and those collided, forming a tornado, which caused all of these small fires with more oxygen to cause those winds to go from, you could say, tornado to hurricane winds, causing countercurrents, which form what they call a firestorm. And a firestorm, and some call it fire tornado, but it's a phenomenon that doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's very, very deadly. And that's what happened over Peshtigo. It encompassed the whole area of Peshtigo and burnt out within an hour.
Wow.
And the fire continued all the way up to Birch Creek. All this red shaded area burnt from the Peshtigo fire. But they call it Peshtigo because of the main
Did they know
fire.
how many people died?
They first thought about 1,200, but after the fact, they started to realize it was a lot more than that, and they think now it's as many as 2,500 were killed.
Wow.
Father Pernin wrote the book, Eyewitness Account, and he thought about 800 from the township proper and 400 from the outlying area of these sugar bush areas, but then after the fire, there was a lot more. So, and many people died even after that because they had lung damage.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
Now, did the man who owns the biggest factory, did he perish in the fire?
well, he was not here at the time, nor was he in Chicago, which is kind of an interesting thing, isn't it? But I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a little further on. So anyway, that night, I was going to say with this fire, so when this strong winds came through, it was so fast and furious, Peshtigo burnt within the hour.
An hour the town burned.
Everything
Wow.
was gone.
Do you know how many people were living in Peshtigo?
Well, the census for 17,
These are all clothes of that era, time period.
1870.
A bed warmer 100 years ago, bed warmers.
Which is very damp. And after the fire, they don't know how many years because people didn't count like they do today. Right. So we really don't know. That's why they say anywhere from 1,200 to over 2,000.
Yeah,
So.
yeah.
Mr. Ogden, not Mr. Ogden, Father Pernin was the Catholic priest here. This is a picture of him in his book. He wrote the eyewitness account, and that's how we tell the story through his book. He
Wow.
writes that particular day it was extremely hot, and the wind front came in, and this fire started. But he himself was kind of aware of that there had been a bad fire the week prior to this, the 24th of September, and they were able to contain it that nothing burnt within Peshtigo. But this particular day, he was going to go to do a service up in Birch Creek, and he would take a steamboat to get up there, and he would go to the Peshtigo harbor with his horse and buggy and take the boat then to go up there and then come back. And that day, when he went to catch this boat on Sunday, they didn't let him, they weren't coming in to pick up passengers because it was so smoky that they were having to navigate by a foghorn in the bay. And so he returned home and he decided to put some things together. And he saved some things from his home, and one of them, their postal chalice. And when he went to get it, he said in his nervousness he lost the key. So he had to take the whole tabernacle and put it on this cart that he was putting some things to save. And that night when those strong winds came in, he said it sounded like 4 railroad engines came roaring in, and the thunder before that was tremendous, and this sky was just so red in the back from the flames, and then the smoke was so dense, it was just very eerie feeling. And so he dismisses his horse, and rings the church bell for the people to get to the river to save themselves, and he tells people that to do that, and he takes that cart and he pushes it manually down to the river. And when he gets down to the river, he sees he can't be worried about these material things. These people think the world is coming to an end, and he needs to minister to them. And so he himself pushes the cart in the water, and then he keeps in the water, and he keeps splashing water on himself, and he has everybody trying to do this, to get into the water, and if they have a garment, to get that wet, to put over their heads, because that fire is so intense, and the ashes and ambers in the air that people's hair ignite. And they had to keep this momentum up and push themselves under the water, splashing themselves from about 10 o'clock until dawn. And he writes, at dawn, it was finally cool enough for them to get out of the water. And he said the people were so cold that they just rolled on the banks to warm and get near burning logs to try to dry off. And of course, then they had to send up men to get help. And then the cleaning up process had to begin. And if you can imagine having to look for your neighbors, your friends, taking care of these bodies, and disposing of all these things. And about the second day of cleaning up, some men were working along the river bank, and they see this white box caught on a branch that's in the tree in the water. And it stood out, if you can imagine, on that upper picture, that artist's rendition, how everything is black and dark and whatever. All of a sudden you see this white box. They were just amazed, and then they got to it. They recognized it was the tabernacle from the Catholic Church. And so when they got there, sure enough, and so that evening the priest came into the area, and they got him to see the box of the tabernacle, and he said they saw it as a white beacon in all this darkness. And when he saw that the contents in it had not been fire or water damage, and it was really like a miracle that this happened. And of course that gave him hope to give these people hope.
I think the Bible was open, didn't it?
Yes. In this case, this is kind of an interesting, the pharmacy here in town bought the property next door to it for a parking lot. And one of the men in our historical society is very well acquainted with all the properties of where the buildings were historically and so on and so forth. And he knew that Mr. Ogden's boarding house was where they were going to pave for this parking lot. So he asked if he could dig before they paved. And what they found, that's actually a Bible. It's petrified, and it's open to Psalm 106, 107. Perhaps that afternoon that was solace for some man.
Wow.
That boarding house housed about 200 people, and the previous fire that I mentioned, it was quite large. They went to that thinking because the time for fire, it was saved, so people went in there, so there was a lot of people in that building that perished because it was probably the 200 that lived there plus 100.
Wow, yeah.
In the cemetery, there's 350 that are buried that are unidentified. There is a monument up for them if you take a walk out there. To the left, if you look, there's that winch that they used to bring this building over. It got plunked down there after the move, and it never moved after that.
Wow.
But the whole cemetery is a tribute to all of them that perished in the fire and the survivors that died later. It's Wisconsin's first historical marker, and there's also plaques up on different graves that tell you about that particular family, how they died.
Talking in here is echoes. I apologize for the talking in the background. That may be a little disturbing, as it was to me just taking the video. But, you know, you're at the mercy. Air blast the corn. That is an awesome fire. Wood stove. These are some of the money, actually commemorative pieces, silver dollars, 1877, and some other coins in there. This basically is what the school desk looked like back in there, and then the books, some of the books of that time period. Pictures, of course, up there. Old Oregon, also bellhop uniform.
That's your mom's cup and saucer right down there. The cup and saucer that we've got.
That one right there.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. 1930s.
That was when Pop was in Japan.
Yeah. Some old canes. That's It's a very nice cane right there. Deer antler in the other. This was empty bag. This is what you put coffee in. Coffee grinder. And a old, like a scales from 1896 scales. Wow. They had all kinds of ingenuity back then. I mean, you can't tell me Americans didn't and Europeans didn't know what they were doing. It's ingenuity. You think of ingenuity now with all computers and stuff, but imagine, I mean, just how much ingenuity and what it took to make these stuff. Old bottles, old beer bottles and cans, snuff, and other things. And this a change thing. See, 1890. I can't imagine. I can't imagine what it took to invent one of those. A larger thing, a storefront thing. It's amazing. It's my favorite word, it seems like, in videos, amazing. But it is, truly. These are druggists, doctors. Have all of the different stuff here. Extracts and stuff to treat various illnesses. Chicken pox. More medicine up here. Wormwood nerd. Sodium benzate. So all this different ones right there, and I guess it came out of the old pharmacy. Flour, other two, I didn't notice that. Containers there. Is that an old gun found?
Read the story.
Oh, wow. A bank robbery gun, .22 caliber pistol used in the May 21st, 1956 robbery of Pesco National Bank, which the teller was wounded, and two males aged 17 and 21 from Chicago, Illinois. After accessing the bank, they threw the pistol over the two-lane highway in front of the bank in the Peshtigo River. Both males were captured within hours. The gun, mired in mud, was found in 2012 by Lonnie Cousin Pesco on the bottom of the river while searching for articles during the river drawdown from the construction of a new bridge, which was completed in October 2012. Wow, it looks bigger than a .22, but that is amazing. These are other old jewelry. Old deputy sheriff badge, Martinique County, Wisconsin. Constable, Pesco, chief of police. Old hats, timepiece, chair, arrowheads. Wow. Now, I'm gonna tell you, that's some expensive stuff when you talk about these things. A spearhead, I've seen people sell those things out west for $1,000, $2,000. They're just very, very expensive. That collection right there, this was from 1904, 1989. That spearhead alone, I bet you could run, somebody, if he sold it, would run $3,000 or $4,000. They're very rare, and because they don't usually remain intact, and they're very expensive. And That one was found, I believe they said 1930. But these are, I think, true Indian artifacts. Everything, even down here. A wedding dress. It's like it may have came out of the church. Catholic church. It's Catholic priest. Yeah, it is, but it's not. And a mural of the fire. So the fire burned in 1 hour to burn the whole town. People in there, like the girl said, they were covering their faces with. They jumped in the river and covered themselves with wet cloth. And 2 spinning wheels. And this is some stuff that recovered from the fire. Recovered from the fire. Whole clock mechanism, brass bell, some melted stuff. And this was the Diggers. It was on TV, 2014, and they recovered that from one of the properties out here.
The first mill was built under Peshtigo in 1836 by Cook Partners.
Some of the stuff, baby stuff that was donated.
To come up to the Pesco and build a wing dam and then build a sawmill. Mr. Paul came up here
81 years, 9 months, and 17 days.
And he was accompanied by a Eurasius Bailey when he built
And turn
the
it
mill.
down just a little bit.
After being here, he was the first resident of the city of Pesco.
These are Bibles donated. History. Amazing. Thomas Boats, they said they had donated this in 1914. This museum is incredible. It's a donation only, but you be sure to donate. That's how they keep it in operation. Right there is a big apothecary, so that's a drug doctor pharmacy's thing. That's incredible. Of course, that looks old, but it's going to have to be when they had electricity. To do their hair pieces, they shows fixing the hair. And this is some type of dryer, but they put this type of thing up there. That is incredible. And see, that is from the lumber company, a wooden pulley from the lumber company. And this is a electric guitar. This must have been one of the first ones, 1940s. Electric guitar and a juice harp on the side. It's all the stuff. Now, these accordions, we had an old accordion just like that one right there. 100 years. It was over 100 years old. We had one at one time. That's amazing. That's another in a harp like that. And then the old dentist chair. Man, I used to be scared to death to go to the dentist. I still don't much like it. But this here is an old dentist chair. I guarantee you, this old spit thing, and I mean, it hadn't changed very much, but that's the dreaded drill up there. I hate going, how you get the dentist drill on me. And this was the old x-ray machine. They put that on you. And this schoolhouse bell from 1905. That's a vacuum over there. Some street signs. And this a fire department apparatus, old type of apparatus that they used. Old fire extinguisher and some of their helmets and that even looks like a modern outfit right there. Shows a picture of the old fire trucks. It tells the history of American firefighters. They're heroes. Even though I'm a retired police officer, they're heroes. And There's always been a kind of contention between officers and firemen for whatever reason. I never understood it. The old stove. There's a running joke that says police officers were born so firefighters would have heroes. It's a 48-star American flag. That was before Alaska and Hawaii. These are some of the logging mechanisms. Stuff like a wine press. I guess that's a wine press. Old theater seats, I remember those in the movies. I'm not that old, but I am getting up there. Old barrels, slings for cutting stuff, and vegetable bundly. And then a big log, it shows big logs, how they work. Some, I guess, logs from the days. Wisconsin lore and legends had the lumberjack here. He would, it cost $14.01 to outfit him in 1897, $8.96 for the clothes, $5.05 for the saw, axe, and cant hook. And cant hook, I don't know what that means. So it shows what they would do. But they do a lot of work. They turn a lot of work out. Shows you follow those rings in the tree, find out how old it is. That's a nice old wooden boat. 1929. Wow. This is the actual, wow, that is an actual a rug loom, a big rug loom. 1840s. This is a saws. One-man saws, the two cross-cut saws, and an ice saw, which, me being from the South, I wouldn't know anything about that other than I guess they use in the ice houses. They would get and saw these big blocks of ice up where they could use in their refrigerators. This is, a lot of this appears to be sledding, like even had their sleds to carry their logs on, pull with horses and stuff. That's all Greek to me because I lived, born and raised in the South, and I probably wouldn't have the history in our museums down there. These, of course, put on oxen and horses. I don't know if you put on a horse or not. Mules, maybe, or oxen. Put them on an ox and use them to pull stuff. Looks like some tire from a way back in the day. Some jacks, too. Car jacks from maybe 1800s or whatever, you know, when the cars came into existence. I don't know, was it 1900s? I said 18, I think it was in the 1900s, early 1900s. But it's just all kinds of tools and hammers and sledge type hammers, and there's a hay knife and stuff. This museum is well worth it. To give a donation. This is some type of water pump, and then the water, I guess, comes through this wooden thing. And yeah, this is a wooden water pipe and coupling. Right here is a wooden water pipe and coupling. I don't know if you can see it. I can't really see down in there. A water pipe used in connection with the wooden pump. Wow. So wooden water pipes. You know, you don't think about that. I didn't think about that. And they got bikes here. Wow, this is a two-seater. This is a two-person bicycle. That's an old one. 1898 Lafayette model. I don't know, is that World War I uniform? Gas mask up there. You know, they used that mustard gas in World War I. That was horrible. And this German helmet, I don't know if you can see the glare or not, German helmet there. They got all these stuff. I think those are like loggers use these to climb and walk on logs, climb trees. Tools of all kinds. Logging industry. The logging industry did help build America. And that's your uniforms again up there, World War I and World War II uniforms. These are more tools, various things.
Forgotten fire. The Wisconsin Sentinel put it as Wisconsin's Holocaust. October 8th.
What did you think about the museum?
I thought it was amazing. It's a beautiful building. Can you go up? I didn't go up.
Huh? No, there's not any way to do that.
Cemetery is open.
And this cemetery has over, I think they said 104 unmarked graves on the fire. Kelly and his wife, 4 children, lived in Upper Sugar Bush. When the fire came, the terrible wind and smoke, the family became separated. Voices could not be heard above the roar of the fire. Mr. Kelly and his children in his arms, as did Mrs. Kelly. The other 2 children clung to each other in the search for safety. Each group lost track of the other. The next day, Mr. Kelly and his child were found dead nearly a mile from his farm. The mother and a boy and a girl and 5 were found sleeping in each other's arms near the farm. The house, barn, and all outbuildings were burned to the ground. On Pesco Fire Cemetery, on the night of October the 8th, 1871, Pesco, a booming town of 1,700 people, wiped out of existence in the greatest forest fire disaster in American history. Loss of life and even property in the Great Fire, occurring the same night in Chicago, did not match the death toll and destruction visited upon the upper eastern Wisconsin during the same dreadful hours. The town of Pesco is centered around a wooden-ware factory, largest in the country. Every building in the community was lost. A tornado of fire claimed at least 800 lives in the area, and many of the victims lie here. The memory of 350 unidentified men, women, and children is preserved in a nearby mass grave erected 1951 by the people of Pesco.